talk more about this with constitutional law attorney and white-collar defense lawyer Seth Berenzweig. Seth, let's first talk about tomorrow and Trump showing up in front of these appellate federal judges. What do you expect from Trump if he's not going to be able to speak? I mean, is it about intimidating the attorneys?
Well, I think a lot of it, frankly, has to do with the media coverage. This hearing in and of itself is a really big deal. The fact that the former president will be walking into the courthouse right down the road here in Washington will make it even more of a media spectacle. This case has multiple implications. As you've noted, this is a hearing that has to do with the issue of presidential immunity. In other words, whether Mr. Trump has immunity for acts taken while he was still president of the United States, and also the issue of double jeopardy, whether the Senate trial for impeachment precludes a prosecution based upon related grounds. The thing that's really interesting about this case, which has multiple applications, both with Judge Chutkan's case in D.C. and the RICO case in Georgia, is that this is really a tune that the D.C. appeals court has heard before. They've ruled in a very similar case for Mr. Trump just a couple of weeks ago in the D.C. Capitol Police case that he is not protected by presidential immunity for the activities that led to and on January 6th. So while there's certainly no way to understand exactly what will be happening, there's a little bit of a crack in our crystal ball. It's really going to be a very significant uphill battle for Mr. Trump tomorrow, and you can expect a ruling that will be coming out from the court as early as Friday.
As early as Friday, okay, we'll be watching for that. So in terms of Trump's attorney's arguments, and one of them being double jeopardy, I mean, that he was already tried in the Senate and acquitted, does that hold any water?
I don't think so. The problem with that argument is multifold. First of all, that was not a criminal proceeding. That was really more of a political forum. So there's really no double jeopardy from a criminal perspective. And frankly, the Senate chamber is not even a court. It is, of course, the United States Senate chamber. So I think that these arguments are really a little bit of a Hail Mary and will probably end up being a Fail Mary. They're creative, they're interesting, but at the end of the day, I think that the Court of Appeals is going to rule against Mr. Trump with all due respect. That will result in an appeal to the United States Supreme Court right down the road here in Washington. And by the way, don't assume that the United States Supreme Court will necessarily accept this appeal. They're already busy with the 14th Amendment disqualification case that's already expedited. That's going to be heard in 30 days from today. And they may decide not to rule, which would mean that if that ruling is in place, the trial here in Washington before Judge Chutkan, the criminal trial, can really move forward roughly on schedule.
Okay, so let's say you're totally wrong, Seth, and you know, the federal appeals court, or let's say the Supreme Court does take it up and says, okay,
Sure.
and rules that Trump does, a former president, a president does have absolute immunity from criminal prosecution.
Right.
And I've heard, you know, the argument that this would set a very dangerous precedent. But when it comes to Trump, if that were to happen, if that kind of decision were to come down, what would that mean for Trump then specifically? I mean, would all of his criminal cases just be thrown out the window?
Well, that would be like taking out the world's biggest fire extinguisher and just really dousing all of the criminal cases. That would take care of the D.C. case in front of Judge Chutkan. That would arguably be a bar with respect to the criminal prosecution for the RICO case in Georgia, because if he has presidential immunity, how can he be criminally prosecuted in either state or federal court? So that would have profound implications in a variety of cases in different jurisdictions. So things will be happening very quickly this week. Everything is already on an expedited schedule before the D.C. Court of Appeals, and they will be ruling very quickly. So you're right, this is going to have huge implications in a variety of cases.
Well, we'll watch this closely with you, and I'm sure, Seth, you're never wrong. So we'll see what they come down with on Friday. Seth Berenzweig, if they do rule. Thanks so much.